Hi folks, Michael here. Just joining me this evening is Padraig Rynne. Padraig is a client of mine and had some ulcerative colitis and came to me last December 2019, and of course has come a number of times since, looking to try and resolve what is a big problem in our society, particularly young people as well, ulcerative colitis. And we're going to have a chat with Padraig really about how he's managed to come out the other end of it and what he has done and how he's gone about it. But Padraig, thank you for joining me. Just before we start to talk, can you go back to the very beginning of this for people so they can appreciate what you've been through over the last number of years?
No problem, Michael. So yeah, it all began in 2016. So I started, first of all, in January 2016, my mother passed away suddenly. So obviously that would have a huge effect on anyone, but shortly after that I started feeling pretty ill, and it seemed like my body never really recovered from that trauma. So maybe by June I started having problems where I was having a lot of bowel movements, maybe 5 or 6 times a day, and then a few weeks later I started noticing blood. I was having blood every time I'd go to the bathroom. And of course, the bowels, it started increasing to where I was going to the bathroom maybe 10 times a day. So I went to my GP. My GP suggested it could be either colitis or Crohn's. He said nothing to really worry about immediately. So he sent me to get a colonoscopy and an endoscopy done. I got that done in the local hospital. And by January, they had diagnosed me with colitis. So that was year 1. I was put on azocolon, which are oral tablets, and they wouldn't be that extreme medication. And I guess they kept me at bay for maybe 8-9 months, and then it started creeping in again. I had another flare-up. So when I went to see the specialist, I was put on steroids to bring the inflammation down, and they increased the azocolon dosage. And then every 6 months from there on in, it was kind of the same routine. I'd have a flare-up that were getting worse each time, and the dosage was increased. And eventually I was put on an infusion. I can't remember the exact name of the drug right now.
Imurin or something like that?
Imurin, that was it, Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was put on that, and I was on that pretty much on and off for a year. They were messing with dosages and trying to figure it out for me, but I knew myself that it wasn't working, and eventually they said, yeah, my body was rejecting it. And then bringing you right up to date, then this December just gone, I ended up in hospital where I'd been going to the bathroom 40 plus times a day. So I basically, from when I'd wake up to when I'd go to bed, it was just diarrhea and blood constantly. That was my experience.
And how, leading up, I mean, that was 2017, 2018, 2019. So, I mean, how did that impact, Padraig, on yourself, your work, your family, your relationship? What was the impact of that? Because I'm sure, if you're feeling sick, you're taking medication, you're running to the loo all of the time, you're getting obviously disillusioned, things aren't happening. How were you feeling? What was the emotional, mental state like?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, I was extremely scared. Like, your first initial thoughts, as you can imagine, was I wondered, did I have cancer? Because I'd never experienced anything like this before. So I was just delighted that was ruled out after the 6 months. So that was followed by probably, I guess for me, I just kind of went with it. I was told I'd be on medication for life. I didn't like hearing that. I had read about the side effects. I knew that there was never going to be a fix for me. But yeah, my mental health would have declined as a result. So much so that by the time I came to December, I remember I would be a really positive person. It's important to say that, and I always find a positive in every negative. That's just the nature of the way I am. But this December just gone, when things had come to this absolute extreme, I knew that I was backed into a corner. I hadn't been able to travel to a football or hurling match with my son. I wasn't able to go in the car to bring my daughter to dancing or to music. The normal things that every father should be able to do. I wasn't able to partake in it at all. I couldn't travel to see, family in Galway or anything like that. That was anything that was over a 2-minute drive wasn't possible. That may sound crazy, but that's the reality of it.
That's horrendous, really, Padraig.
It was so bad. I remember sitting in the conservatory of my house one day. I was working from home the same day, and it was the day before I went into hospital, and it was the first day where I broke down, and I felt like I was just a burden on everyone around me. I remember thinking, how does my wife put up with me being so ill the whole time? My kids can't, have a relationship with me, and I know I was starting to feel grumpy. I'd be snappy with people, which again wouldn't be in my nature, but it was pure frustration that I didn't realize what was going on. The mental health side of it was an absolutely huge obstacle. And actually, that was the first thing that I felt that you helped me with, Michael, because you definitely helped bridge that gap very quickly for me in a way that I didn't think could have been possible. That's the honest truth,
Yeah, because sometimes I find when people come to the clinic, Padraig, is that Professor Padraig Rynne, he wrote a very good book recently called The Language of Disease. It's a book that everybody absolutely should get. I was saying to you there before we came online, Padraig, that you should get it. It's really, really a good book, The Language of Disease by Professor Padraig Rynne. And the thing about it is this: he talks about words. That the words that are used have a huge impact on a patient. That the words that doctors or consultants use, and I'm sure when a doctor tells you this for the rest of your life, or maybe I think that they also spoke to you about possibly removal of the colon, or certainly serious surgery as well.
They did, yeah. They told me when I went into hospital, they put me on IV steroids, the strongest you can have, and the specialist came to see me and they said, listen, there's no medication going to work for you to even keep it at bay, to live a normal life. They explained that I was just existing rather than living, which was true. They were right. But they told me, I remember asking one of the specialists, would diet have anything to do with this, for example? She said, absolutely not. We need you to go home, eat as much meat and dairy as possible to make yourself stronger so we can remove your colon and your bowel. And I just remember thinking, they're going to take away half my body without even giving me a chance to investigate if other alternatives might work. They were telling me absolutely.
It's crazy to think. It's crazy to think that people have digestive problems, and the notion that food doesn't play a role, when Professor Padraig Rynne himself says, and indeed all of the commentators involved in health, say that ulcerative colitis in particular is environmental based. The likes of Crohn's, there can be a genetic aspect to it, but in the likes of colitis or ulcerative colitis, that it's environmental based, that it's our lifestyle, it is what we eat, it's the stress we're under. And of course, you were traveling a lot at the time because you were a professional musician, isn't that right? You're teaching music as well.
Yes.
You were traveling a lot.
Yeah. So I was double jobbing basically. I remember traveling to Sarajevo, and I had to fly out from Dublin Airport, and even the thought of getting in the car for 2.5 hours to get to the airport, because I had to drive throughout the night. And I'm so used to it at this stage. Where am I going to plan to have my toilet breaks? It may be 4 or 5 breaks on the way to Dublin, but still, it was the middle of the night. So the stress that would bring on by not knowing if I could get to a bathroom when I'd need to get to one.
Being confronted in that situation like you were, Padraig, from a medical perspective, saying, well, this is where you are, go away and kind of fatten yourself up a little bit, and the surgery is now the option here, that surgery to remove the bowel because medicine wasn't working, or it was very limited in its effect, in the sense whether you were taking steroids or immunosuppressants, which people are taking for these types of conditions. At what point did you just realize, I mean, obviously before you came to me, but at what point did you realize that then, was that the point you realized that you needed to do something, to tick another box before you went down that road? And was it that when you made the decision to come and see the likes of myself? Or?
Absolutely. Well, when I was lying in hospital for that week, I started researching online alternative options. And I had an inkling that diet had something to do with it. And my wife knew somebody who has gone to yourself with another problem that you had healed. So my wife straight away said, let's see if we can get in touch with Michael and see him as quick as possible. So yeah, that it snowballed my want to go to see you and to look at alternatives and see if I had nothing to lose, Michael. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There might maybe some people that are suspicious of alternatives, but that's the nature of it, because I guess when you know nothing but medication, until you're put in that corner and have had a reason to investigate other options, you're not going to. So I was in that corner and I strongly believed it was going to work. You know, I went to you with the attitude that I was going to make this work with you, and I had nothing to lose either way. You know,
I remember the very first conversation we had, and you talked about it there earlier, Padraig, about the image that was created for you, that you know you were going to go home and fatten yourself up, and you know they were going to, and that was an image that was very clear in your mind when we first met. And I was saying to you, let's change that image. Let's look at the possibility, or another possibility, that you can directly influence your own body. That let's look at another possibility, and that's a possibility that your body can heal if we confront it at a different level. And we began the treatment then, of course, for Padraig, and pretty much, you know, I remember you when you came first in, I think maybe it was December, or certainly was December, if it wasn't, it was January. I remember you having pain down that descending colon, that left-hand side of your body. And I remember you saying how you felt that releasing. You might describe that for people, what you felt on that treatment of that first day or whatever.
Yeah, I remember it was so strange because I didn't know what to expect. But when we started working, we chatted first, which was great. And I straight away felt like you were injecting confidence into me, if that makes sense.
Which is important, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, completely. And you were creating this vision of health. So I was so used to hearing negativity about what was wrong. You were actually telling me what was going to be right and what my future held for me without me realizing it. That was the first thing I noticed. And then when we started working on the energy, the treatment itself, I remember having this really strange sensation on my left-hand side where I felt pain because there were ulcers on that side of my colon, and it was heavily inflamed. I started feeling this warm sensation, and the best way I can explain it was like you were almost dragging something through my body, and it was coming out through my toes. That may sound crazy, but I felt like there was something being pulled out of me and being released through my toes. I can't remember whether it was the first session or the second one, Michael, but I remember that coming back to you and saying, I actually slept on my left-hand side. It's the first time in 2 years I haven't just slept on my back. I was able to turn in bed. So it was a huge...
For some people, you see, as you say, Park, it's strange because, because some people expect a magic wand or a magic pill. And what we do is, for the benefit of people maybe watching this for the first time, what we do in our clinics is that we work with the energy system of the body, because we believe that everything begins at that energetic level, and that if we can release the energy blockages that are building up in the body due to emotional stress, burnout, the nature of the type of lifestyle you had that created this problem, that if we could release that energy, that in some way would trigger the healing. And that's what we were doing, and that's what was happening to your body, that it was something that we were working on that was very real, and that you were having that reaction to it. And that's fantastic. I mean, it's always great to hear those, how people respond to the actual treatment itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I started feeling it straight away, and by the end of the week, I could already feel it was like such a large gap from where I was when I came to you to when
the bowel motions then, Padraig, they started to lessen as well. That came over maybe a couple of weeks, wasn't it? I mean, we worked with you, and then we talked about the nutrition side of things, which we'll come to in a moment, because you took a certain avenue in that. But the thing about it was that with the energy work and with the basic knowledge we gave you around nutrition, that the bowel motion started to lessen and you began to sleep, wasn't that?
Yeah, like I was starting to wean myself off the steroids. I was told not to, but yes, when I started doing that, my bowel movements were still decreasing, which shouldn't have happened. So that was already defeating what they had told me was going to happen. I was told that as soon as I'd come down to, I think, 6 steroids, I'd be back in hospital and in for emergency surgery. So I was coming off the steroids without things getting worse. They were actually improving. So it was kind of doubling up, if you want, in the healing, if you think that way. Yeah.
And the thing about it is that you started to get better, and then we talked about the importance of nutrition and all of that, because that was the big question in your mind with food. And we really pointed out the importance of food. And Padraig, as well as the advice we gave you, then you began to research it yourself because you saw the benefits of the advice we were giving you. And then you started looking at the possibility of, what about if plant-based food and protein and all that would help your gut function? You might explain, how you got onto that and what you did around that.
Yeah, so I basically, when I spoke to you, we decided to go towards a really good diet, which got me thinking, how extreme could I take this? Now, this was a personal choice. I better make that clear. I started reading about the China study, it was called. That was the first book I read. I found that really interesting. I had a friend who had been told he was terminally ill a few years ago, who decided to change to whole food plant-based diet, and years later they're calling it a miracle. He's still here.
Yeah.
So I just knew that it could work that way, and I started finding more and more colitis and Crohn's and people with digestive problems that had gone through the whole food plant-based, and they had found that it was helping, if not curing them. So I got this book which really flipped my mind, called How to Heal Colitis and Crohn's Disease by Dr. Klein. He was, I think in the 70s, he had colitis, and he took it upon himself, using the basis of the China study, to go on a whole food plant-based diet. So I worked with two nutritional experts who had actually been through this program for 6 months. So they basically coax you, they watch your blood, they check your blood every so often to make sure you're getting all the nutrients you need and all of that. So I gave up all meat, anything to do with animal basically, and I started eating soft foods high in fibre. And it's not that the food actually heals you, that's the strange thing. By eating the correct foods, it gives your body
heal itself.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, so you're not actually irritating what needs to repair itself. You're eating the correct foods that should. High in fibre means you should be going to the toilet more, but it actually kept decreasing. So I was eating a lot of bananas. I remember you laughed at me one day. I think I had 16 bananas before I saw you one day. You probably thought I was bananas that day.
Exactly.
But, it eventually, my taste...
Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly, whatever works. But my taste buds just changed completely to such a way that I was a big steak eater and meat eater, that now I couldn't even imagine eating anything other than what I eat. I love it so much. And the last blood tests I got done, everything was amazing. I had high cholesterol for years. My cholesterol is just down to, they called it heart attack and stroke proof now. I'm one of 1% in the world.
But that was just the next point I was going to make to you, that as a result, and this is often sometimes, very poorly understood, that when you work with energy and when you work with nutrition, which I believe, and obviously the emotional side of things, which we talked about and dealt with, and going through the meditation that I taught you and all of that when you combine all that and you take that responsibility, that this was creating a physiological change. And what's critical is that the bloods that you were having done in the hospital was showing that change. And even your professor, I think, they were all a little bit baffled by how, your bloods could be coming back to normal by just what it is that you were doing with the energy work and nutrition and meditation and all of that.
So like my inflammation markers were up at one of the highest they had seen. I think, was this up around 78 or around that? I can't remember the exact number when I was in hospital. And considering I'd come off the immunosuppressants, which they told me I wouldn't survive coming off, and I'd gotten off the steroids for the first time in a few years, and I was taking no azacolan, so no medication, completely gone at this stage, and my inflammation markers were below 5.
How long was that after we started treating you, Padraig, that you went from...
That extreme to the below 5 was 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so eventually you went back to your professor in the Galway clinic, I think it was, or...
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And what was their reaction to the fact that you were like this? What was his reaction or their reaction to the fact that you'd made these changes, your bloods were showing that you were doing so well, your bowel motions were back to how many a day? back to normal, Nelly?
Yeah, like they're at one or two now. They have been with a while. So
Perfect. So, I mean, that's what any ordinary person will have. What was
yeah.
their reaction to that?
Well, I've been very lucky because the specialist that I have, first of all, he advised me that I shouldn't come off my medication.
Of course, yeah, of course.
I totally understand that. That's what he's trained to do, you know.
Yeah,
But when I spoke to him, he was very supportive. Once he heard of what I'd done, he said he had heard of the China study. He had heard of a few people that had taken the route I had taken, and that they had done it successfully. And he said, just keep doing whatever you're doing, because we can't actually, we were never going to get this result with the actions that we were going to take. So he was very supportive. He was, I think the way he put it is, the science just hasn't caught up
yeah,
for us yet, or something like that. I can't remember
yeah.
his exact wording, but he was very encouraging, and
Good.
he was actually happy for me to hear that things had worked out the way they had.
And kind of that's our attitude in the clinic, that what you want to do is you want to take the best of everything, because the center of focus has to be the patient, as far as I'm concerned. And I think we must put the patient center of focus, and that, you know, it isn't about Michael or Doherty or anybody else. It is about creating the environment, because there are many people out there, and we're not saying that people go off their medication. We're not saying this is a magic cure for any disease. We're just saying that, you know, here's an experience that we want to, you know, expose people to. That you know, that if you do adapt changes in your life, working with energy and nutrition and your mindset, and giving that little bit of hope that, you know, things can change, because now you're pretty much 10, 11 months on, almost 10 months on, and right now your life is normal. You're taking no medication.
That's right.
You know,
And tell you how far I've come. The fact that I couldn't even remember of the name of the medication I was on, Michael.
yeah,
It's almost like I've forgotten parts of it, how sick I was, because I feel so healthy now. If that makes sense.
that's hopeful to people, isn't it?
Absolutely. I couldn't have thought there was going to be a cure for this. I was told it was an incurable disease, and
Yeah,
here I am on no medication. And as you say, it's so important that people realise medication is still needed, but both
absolutely. Yeah,
work in parallel with each other. You know,
absolutely.
if I need to go in, if I break my leg, I'm going to need a painkiller. You know, it's as simple as that.
Surgery or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly. But this disease is curable, and it doesn't need, you don't need to be told that it's incurable. There are options there, and people need to investigate it. You need a lot of self-will to go with it, and to have, you know, to get your mind straight and focused on healing yourself. Like, I remember you saying to me, exercise was important, sleeping correctly is important, and giving time to yourself. I would have been a person that would have overworked. I would have worked 12 to maybe 14, 16 hours a day when I had to, and a lot of weekends. I didn't have to, but I thought I had to. I still get the same work and the same results now, but I actually turn my phone off at 6 o'clock. I work 9 to 6, and that's it then. You have to take all the aspects in to heal yourself, I think. It's not just one or two things.
yeah. I mean, that's the real key to it. When you look at illness, and I know, having discussed this with medics myself, that when you look at ulcerative colitis, or inflammatory bowel disease, albeit Crohn's can be a little bit different, but it can still be helped hugely. The thing is that if people do like you do, or did, Padraig, and change your lifestyle, and looked beyond the medical model as an option, that you can yield results. Would you advise, would that be your advice to people? Would that be your sort of, probably advice is the wrong word, would that be what is your message to people this evening, you know, who might find themselves in circumstances where, you know, they're taking a medication, they have the ulcerative colitis, they don't maybe feel like they're able to change anything or do anything about it? What's your real message to them now?
Well, my message is clearly look at other options. There are other options out there. They're proving to be extremely successful, where medication or the medical world isn't able to help you. And I know I'm living proof that you can feel better than you ever have felt in your whole life. So it's worth investigating. It's worth trying it. It's worth following through from start to finish. And you've got absolutely nothing to lose, but everything to gain by actually investigating it.
I remember saying to you, Park, that, you know, in 9 months' time, we can look back and see what you would have done. That was in January. This is 10 months. And literally 10 months, it's hard to believe that in such a short space of time that you've gone from a situation where they wanted to remove your bowel and, you know, stay on the same diet and do all these things. They wanted to remove your bowel to, you know, deciding to do things differently, and you still have your bowel back living a normal life. I mean, to all intents and purposes, that's miraculous, folks. But in reality, it's literally down to hard work and getting the right people and the right therapies. Isn't that really the nuts and bolts of it?
That's absolutely, yes. You've hit the nail on the head. I couldn't even rephrase it in a better way. That's exactly how I would feel about it, Michael. Yeah.
Now, obviously, of course, for Padraig, you know, it's important that he keeps managing his health, that he looks at his diet, and, you know, that, and you can make that a family thing, of course, and that we are there to support you. And I'm sure the medical people are there to support you as well, Padraig, that if ever you needed to, you know, so it's all about making sure that this is behind you. We will certainly continue working with you, Padraig, with the treatment as well. And I think with a combination of the energy treatment, nutrition, the right attitude, and if your attitude is right, that you can influence everything that's going on in your life, folks. So I hope you enjoyed the chat with Padraig. I wanted to bring Padraig to you to chat to you about this. I think that, you know, what he has, the efforts that he's made over the last 9 months is clearly, how he feels is clearly reflective of those efforts. And I think if we could all take that message, that if we're willing to put in a little bit of time and effort in our own lives and in our own health and take responsibility and make the changes, that the body can reflect that. So, Padraig, I wish you continued health. We're there to help you, as of course many are, and your family. And I'm looking forward. We'll chat soon over the next week or so, get you into the clinic, keep things going for you. So thanks for joining me. I hope this is going to be helpful and helpful for people to listen to, that if you have irritable bowel or inflammatory bowel disease, or if you have bowel disease, that you can influence it yourself. So Padraig, thank you for those words. Thank you for the message of hope, the endorsement as well. We appreciate it, and I'm delighted that you have come out the other end of this terrible type of digestive problem. Thank you, Padraig.
Thanks for all your help and helping me fix myself, Michael. Thanks so much.
Not at all. You're welcome, Padraig. It's my pleasure.